Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of CICS 298A, Leadership Practicum. I'm going to talk a little bit about the reading and present some new information in this video, and also give you some helpful hints or reminders for tutoring. So let me share some slides with you. So we're talking about stress in the brain, and the reading that you did was called What You Should Know About Your Brain. And the very high level takeaways are that a lot of stress can inhibit your learning, that your brain has like a thinking center and a reactive center, sort of your prefrontal cortex and your lizard brain. And when you're in your lizard brain, it's pretty hard to learn well. And when you are just reacting, you're not able to filter information very well. And there are also things you can do to get your brain to be in that thinking space more often, such as taking breaks, taking care of your body's needs, and doing things that feel positive, like hanging out with your friends or doing something that you feel accomplished at. Those things can all help you to learn better. So I think that this is important for you to have as an understanding going into tutoring, that there are so many things that affect how we learn. And especially as computer scientists, we sometimes think that our emotional state is really separate from the work that we're doing, because the work we do is objective. I am here to tell you that learning is never objective. Your brain has emotions and facts in it, and they're all tangled up. So we have to understand both of those things in order to understand how we learn. So as we talk about this, and you'll have a chance to discuss this later this week in some discussion section, I just want you to be considering both yourself as a learner and the tutees that you work with as learners, and other folks that you work with, such as students in the class you use CA for. So in addition to the reading, I want to also talk to you about something called polyvagal theory. I have this quote that I'm going to read to you from Bessel van der Kolk, who's a famous-ish psychologist who writes a lot about trauma and difficult emotions in the body. So he says, the polyvagal theory provided us with a more sophisticated understanding of the biology of safety and danger, one based on the subtle interplay between the visceral experiences of our own bodies and the voices and faces of the people around us. It explains why a kind face or a soothing tone of voice can dramatically alter the way we feel. It clarifies why knowing that we are seen and heard by the important people in our lives can make us feel calm and safe, and why being ignored or dismissed can precipitate rage reactions or mental collapse. It helped us understand why attuning with another person can shift us out of disorganized and fearful states. In short, Porges's theory, he's the person who did polyvagal theory, makes us look beyond the effects of fight or flight and put social relationships front and center in our understanding of trauma. All that is to say, I want to show you this graphic that helps us understand a little bit of what polyvagal theory really means. So in polyvagal theory, there are 3 states. There is the dorsal vagal state. Sorry, my cursor is weird. The sympathetic state and the ventral vagal state. So when we're in dorsal vagal, we are in shutdown mode. We can't think, we can't cope, we are collapsed. We think of that as like a freeze state or a flop state. If you've ever been in the kind of mental state where you go into a class and you are just like, I'm too overwhelmed, I can't take it. I cannot take in one more piece of information, so I am just gonna sit here. That I would call dorsal vagal. Or the feeling that you can't get out of bed in the morning. That can also be dorsal vagal. Dorsal vagal looks different for every person, just like all these other states look different for every person. The sympathetic state is the fight or flight state. I'm in danger, I need to run, I need to fight back. Your heart might be pounding. You might get sweaty, all those kind of like nervous symptoms in your body. And then the ventral vagal state is a state of social connection. You feel safe. You feel like you want to connect with other people, or you want to connect with the world. You don't have to love being extroverted in order to be in this ventral vagal state. It can be about like, yes, I want to go take a walk in nature and I feel really connected to the nature around me. So that sense of connection that the ventral vagal state gives us. So these images are on a ladder because we go up and down through these states. We sort of aim to live here and connected to the greater world, but we can't live there all the time because things happen that make us feel. So we might go down into this sympathetic nervous state. So that would be sort of where our like midbrain is. And if we get certain cues, we can fall into the dorsal state, which is like your brain stem. You are only concerned with doing the bare minimum to survive. So another way to look at the polyvagal theory is, instead of a ladder, looking at it as this bell curve. So the sympathetic state is not actually a bad thing. Sometimes we get in fight or flight because we're excited. If you have ever played sports and you're full of adrenaline as you are chasing a ball. I don't know. I don't play sports. But there's a lot of adrenaline there because you're trying to accomplish a goal. If you have been taking a test, even when you're really prepared for the test, you might be in that sympathetic state where you have a little bit of anxiety, you're like a little shaky, but you're also doing well. So that's what the squiggly line is, that we can really kind of bounce between the social engagement state, the ventral vagal state, and the sympathetic state. And we can just like oscillate between there and like be really happy. But when we have this increased arousal on this bell curve, our heart rate is really like pounding and we just like get too overwhelmed. We can go into this body collapse freeze state, that dorsal vagal state. You might feel numb, depressed. I like this one here. It says preparation for death, which feels really heavy, but being in that freeze state can be really heavy. You're just sort of like waiting for life or death to take you. You feel trapped. You have no control. And it says here, I can't is the part of the freeze state, and I can is in the sympathetic state. And what's really important to notice too is that once you get into this freeze state, you have to come back through the sympathetic state in order to get to ventral vagal again. You can't just like go directly from I'm frozen, I'm collapsed to yes, I'm safe and awesome. It's a process. You have to come back up the ladder. You have to deactivate, and it means that some weird stuff is going to happen in your body. This image is pretty widely available. If you Google polyvagal theory, you can find it, and then you can read the words a little bit better if you're curious about what happens in the body in each of these states. But I tell you this because this is something that happens to us all the time. Like our polyvagal system is running all the time when we're awake, sometimes when we're sleeping. But here's an example you may have experienced. So let's imagine that you go into class and you are feeling pretty good. Good things happen to you today. You are all set for having a great day. Or maybe you're not even all set for having a great day. Maybe something crappy just happened to you. But no matter what, you might be in an okay place going into class. And your professor says something and you don't get it. And the midterm is coming right up and you feel anxious about the fact that you don't get it. Your sympathetic nervous system is activating, your heart rate increases, you feel anxious, and you decide, okay, I need to ask a question so I can clarify this. So two things can happen. One is that something helpful happens. The professor answers your question, they're affirming, they might like tell you, oh, lots of people have had that question and here's an answer. Or make sure you check out these slides from this lecture in order to understand that better. You know what you're going to do next, you have a path forward. And then you return to that ventral vagal state, the social engagement state, and things are good. But the other thing that could happen is that you might not get a positive response. Maybe the professor indicates that you should really know that answer, that this should be easy to understand, that your question isn't reasonable. And that can shut you down and make you feel hopeless. Well, I shouldn't even be in this class. Why do I try? I shouldn't get this degree, things like that. That freeze flop state or the dorsal vagal state. So that's how we sort of experience moving from ventral vagal to dorsal vagal in ways that might be pretty quick or just small things that might happen. So the question is always like, how do you get back out of dorsal vagal? Well, first of all, noticing that it's happening and seeing what you can do from there. Do you need to eat a snack? Do you need to take a break? Do you need to call a friend? What can you do to get yourself to feel a little bit better? Once you're in that freeze state, you need to just take small, small bites. Which brings me to what happens if your tutee feels this way? When someone asks for tutoring, they are often not in a great place with the material. They might be really anxious. They might feel hopeless. They might feel really combative or negative. So how can you bring them in so that they're in that positive learning space? You can give cues of social safety, that it's okay to not understand, that you have felt similarly in the past, that it's actually really hard, or it might be just like a tricky thing to discern, affirming their experience, or just saying something positive about them, like, oh, I like that thing in your background. You can't see anybody's laptop when you're on Zoom, but like saying something positive about them that you're noticing. Or you can also help your tutee regulate themselves if you feel like that's appropriate. You can ask them if they want to take a break, if they want to tell you about something that happened in their day, or you can, a lot of these are a little easier to do when you're in person together. You can like say, let's go get a coffee, or do you want to do this over lunch instead? Something like that. But you have fewer options when you're doing this online. But it's okay to reschedule. It's okay to let them take a break and come back. It's okay to talk about something else. Maybe something else is bothering them that's not even the material. And it's okay to talk about that if you feel comfortable. But the idea is that you want to bring them back into at least a sympathetic state, if not a ventral vagal state, so that they can do the learning that they need to do. And just knowing that it might be impossible for it to happen when they are in that really activated or really frozen state, that will do a world of good for how you can help other people. And I want to point out too that if things seem really bad, you've offered some social support, you have offered the things you know how to offer, and your tutee is still feeling really hopeless. Maybe they're saying that they are worthless, or they just want to give up. Things that might sound scary to you in kind of a mental health or depression kind of way. If you feel scared, you do not have to handle this on your own. I'd like to encourage you to come talk to me about it. I have a lot of resources that I can direct either to the tutee to, or I can help connect them with advising, various different places. Or I can help you get the resources that you need to point that person to. You can also request support for a student through the Dean of Students office. There's this link here, and I can post these slides in the Moodle so you can have access to this link. But you can tell the Dean of Students office that you're worried about a student, and they will do a wellness check on them. Just make sure that they get a response and that that person says they're doing okay. I think sometimes it's nicer to have a dialogue with the student if you feel open to that. But if you feel like something is really off and you want a way to get help for that person, you can request support for that student. You can also request support for yourself through this link. So that's what I have to say about polyvagal theory. Again, we've got the ventral vagal, that social place. We go into our sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, getting nervous, getting anxious, maybe getting angry. But that's okay. We can kind of bounce between these two. But sometimes when things go really bad, we go into this dorsal vagal state, and that's our freeze or flop state. And we need to come back up into the activated sympathetic state in order to get back to the social engaged state, the ventral vagal state. And that's where we do our best learning. So a couple things about tutoring that I just want to remind you of. I am trusting you to edit the sheet carefully. When we give you access to that sheet to edit, if you see someone else's name there, don't erase their name, please. I think sometimes it happens by accident, but if you can kind of be mindful if you're editing the sheet at the same time as someone else, try and honor who was there first. Again, we have all these mechanisms that we can use to help balance out the tutoring requests so that everybody is going to get a fair shot at getting all their hours done. I don't want you to feel like you're fighting each other for them. Though I will say that unless you are really adept at tutoring 230, which right now has the most requests, please try and only request 1 hour at a time so that everybody can get in the swing of it. I've noticed that some people are requesting a lot of hours, but unless you are tutoring for those upper level courses, try to keep that back. The only things you need to do after tutoring is to fill out the reflection and ask your tutee to fill out the review. That's it. Then Serena and I just track the hours using those forms. And finally, students are going to ask for help with projects. Please be cautious. In order to retain academic honesty, you should never allow your tutees to copy and paste the code you write or code for them with screen sharing. And definitely never screen share code that you have from being a student or a UCA for that course. What a lot of tutors did last semester was to open up a blank document and code some things that illustrated a concept, but not something that was directly related to the project as an example, and then took it away. In the best tutoring relationships, the tutee holds the pen. There's no pen really related here, but they should be doing the work. They're doing more work than you are doing. That's the ideal. So as much as you can talk them through it while they type, that's the best case scenario. Okay, any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I hope that you have a stimulating discussion about these concepts on Wednesday or Friday, and I will talk to you soon.